Aloha from Honolulu, from the East-West Center, and welcome to this edition of the East-West Center Research Speaker Series. Through this series, we explore the environmental, demographic, political, and economic processes that are shaping the Asia-Pacific region in profound ways. As you know, our topic today is bringing bureaucracy back in, rethinking Japan's defense policy making. Our speaker is Ryo Kiridori, who is a research fellow at the National Institute for Defense Studies in Tokyo. He's been there since 2016. He is also currently a visiting scholar at the East-West Center, and he's a PhD candidate in political science at the University of Toronto. So soon we'll be calling him Dr. Kiridori, but for today it's Mr. Our format today is we have 1 hour total. We'll have a lecture as long as Mr. Kiridori wants it to be. Then we'll have a question and answer session for the remaining time. If you're in the room and you want to ask a question and you're called on, please turn on your microphone by getting this red light on the machine in front of you. Red is good in this case. If you're online and you want to ask a question, look at the bottom of your screen. There'll be an icon for a Q&A function. You click on that, type in your question, and then we'll see it here and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Mr. Kiridori.
Thank you very much, Professor Danny, for the introduction, and thank you very much for East-West Center to organize this workshop and giving me this opportunity. And I'm very grateful for all your support. First of all, today my topic is about the bureaucracy, which has been kind of overshadowed by the political leadership in the Japanese policymaking process. So I will refocus on the role of bureaucracy in the Japanese policymaking process, especially the defense and the security policymaking process. So I'll go start with the background very quickly. The Japanese defense policy has been characterized as defense activism, and since the end of the Cold War, there was a numerical spark of the defense reforms. But since the 2000s, especially, I know it's the picture is very small, so you can't see that. You might not be able to see that. But from the 2000, actually, the frequency of the reform attempt actually even increased and accelerated. And more controversial reform attempts were made by the government. And it was sort of coincided, how can I say, alongside with the rise of the political leadership, which sometimes Japanese political scientists calls. And I wouldn't go over each one of the reforms, but started from the electoral reforms in the 1994 and the series of administrative reforms at the end of the 1990s. And also the Koizumi administration was the first administration that take advantage of the administrative reform, and further reforms occurred during the Abe administration. So the basic idea is to get increased authority over the bureaucrats, and they want to take the initiative in the policymaking process. So that's basically the idea of the political leadership in Japanese policymaking area. And my research question is very simple. What's the role of bureaucracy, role of bureaucrats in the era of the political leadership? So do they just follow what the political leader says to them, even if the politically initiated policy is kind of diverge from their own policy preferences? Or is there any way to resist the political leadership or bureaucrats? And if so, what's the specific way? What's the specific techniques and policy mechanisms they employ? And most importantly, when do they win? When do bureaucrats win over the politicians. That's my research question. And literature. Some of you might be very familiar with the Cold War literature, like people are focusing on the role of bureaucracy to explain the Japanese economic miracles. And the very famous one was MITI and the Ministry of Finance to explain the developmental state of the Japanese economic policy. But after that, the clear shift was made from the bureaucracy to political leadership, and some focus on the general emergence of the security-oriented politicians, and some focus on the role of individual leadership, like Koizumi Junichiro or Shinzo Abe, and some were focusing on institutional transformation that actually strengthened the authority of the prime minister. So the bureaucracy is overshadowed by the role of political leadership. So I will try to shift the focus onto the bureaucratic side of the policymaking process. So this project is still work in progress. So my primary objective here is to get as much feedback as possible and the critiques from you guys. But for now, this is what I think. And the argument is pretty much simple, maybe oversimplified, but the Japanese security bureaucrats can not only just support and resist the political leadership, but also they actively try to pursue their own political policy preferences, even if that is kind of conflictual with their political superior. And just a caveat, if I say security bureaucrats, it's a legally prescribed国家公務員, who is a national civil servant. And if I say security bureaucrats, that is those bureaucrats who are affiliated with the security agencies like MOD, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, NSS, and the Cabinet Secretariat. And there is a certain bureaucratic advantages, and in general, it's usually specialty and information and the procedural control of the bureaucrats. And there is also the Japan-specific bureaucratic advantages when it comes to the defense and the security policy. Since Japan has a so-called pacifist constitution, the legal and constitutional knowledge is very crucial. And the human resources in Japan, the politician doesn't have a lot of human resources compared to bureaucrats. Bureaucrats has a lot of human resources, but compared to other countries, I will show it to you later. The human resource scarcity is a huge problem in the Japanese politicians. And also the government legislations, it's kind of dominated by the government initiated legislation. And the passage rate of the government legislation was far higher than the Diet members' legislation. So there is a gap of the policymaking capacity between the politician and the bureaucrats. And also defense specific, there is a defense specific bureaucratic advantages. Its specialty is, of course, it requires complicated military knowledge, training and human resources, technology and operations, so on and so forth. And similarly, the information, there is stock of the classified information involving into the related to the defense affairs. So the operational strategies and the quality of weapons, those kind of classified information. And the channels, the day-to-day interactions with the partners and the counterparts in the partners and the allied countries. So they not only get the information from them, but also they can build the personal trust with their counterparts, with their allies and partners. So this just shows the comparison between the United States and Japan of the policymakers, human resources of the politicians' policymaking capacity. And the bottom line, the red number indicate that caps for the assistant, caps for employing the assistant, personal, the politician's personal assistant. So in the US, the lower house can hire up to 22 people, 22 assistants, and the upper house, there's no limit. But in Japan, that's up to 3 people, and only 1 person can be the policy staff, but the other 2 are administrative staff. So there's a stark contrast. And this is legislation legislation data, and that number comes from only the normal diet session. But if you look at the proposed legislation, there's not so much difference between the government legislation and the diet members legislation. But if you look at the passage rate, the government legislation dominates the diet legislation, like 95% of their proposal, and in the diet members legislation, it's only about 20% of all the proposed legislations. So the government legislation is written and drafted by the Japanese bureaucrats. So definitely in the policymaking process, that the role of bureaucracy is very important, and the politicians or elected officials must rely on the bureaucrats in making the policy. But there are still political efforts to offset this gap, and that is the whole point of the institutional reforms. So they started with the Cabinet Secretariat reforms in 2001. That was to increase the human resources and the policymaking authority and the information centralization, and the private advisory panel or conflict council. That's incorporating the external views into the policymaking process. And also the establishment of NSC and NSS, that's basically policymaking, coordination, and information centralization, but in the security-oriented issues. But still, bureaucratic autonomy remains to some certain extent. For example, if you look at the panel, private advisory panel, the member selection is sometimes often done by the bureaucrats. That allows them to control the agenda to some extent. And ministries still maintain a direct channel to the prime minister. They once in a while provide the briefings and the explanations about the defense policies to the prime minister. And at the end of the day, the bureaucrats are bureaucrats. Even if they are working for the administrative body directly controlled by the prime minister, they come from somewhere. They come from some ministry, right? And through the decades of experience in their original ministry, they internalized ministerial culture, ministerial ethos, policymaking habit, policymaking procedures, political views, international views, and so on and so forth, security views. So these affect their personal beliefs in their policy preferences. So I think that that's kind of they created their personal individual interest in political policymaking process. So how do they do that? So I think there is a variation depending on who initiate the policy. So if Prime Minister is the one who initiated the policy process is top down from the Prime Minister to the bureaucrats. And once the Prime Minister publicly mentioned about the specific policy issues, that's already on agenda, right? And what the bureaucrats would do is just respond to the agenda. They might support or resist the Prime Minister with certain methods, including when they support, they are kind of ordinary methods like providing expertise assistance, technical assistance, and building external coalitions. But when they resist the political initiative, they are trying to control the options and informations. But when the policy is initiated by security bureaucrats, the process is reversed. So it's a bottom up. So they are trying to create the agenda. It's a pre-agenda setting. So they are trying to control and create and shape the agenda in order to shape the Prime Minister's preferences with some methods like problem framing. It's even if there is one issue, there are so many perspectives of the issue, and they can pick up one specific perspective, and this is the issue, and they can frame in that way. But now similarly, the narrative construction, and they can create the certain narratives within the government or with the media, and also timing control. They do not want to be stupid to propose controversial policy proposal to the Prime Minister when the Prime Minister is not in a good mood. So they are very cautious of picking the time. And also they use the external actors, especially the allies, which is the United States. I'm not saying that this is a gaiatsu or foreign external pressure on the Japanese government to do something, but it's more like the promise with the United States, agreement with the United States. Once they made a promise with the United States, no longer issue of the Japan only, not a domestic issue. It's a alliance issue or international promise. So they need to commit into the that promise. So that's some kind of approaches that the bureaucrats would employ, and there would be outcomes when bureaucrats win and lose. So this is also very simplistic theory, but I would focus on the relative expertise in order to explain the outcomes variation. And in a political bureaucratic conflict, the relative expertise, balance of expertise is favoring the bureaucrats, security bureaucrats over the political leaders. So I would predict that the security bureaucrats in political bureaucratic conflict, security bureaucrats are more likely to win. But inter-bureaucratic conflict is different. The relative expertise, of course, depends on the jurisdiction or areas that the problem emerges. And inter-bureaucratic fighting over the genuine, pure defense, security issues is theoretically possible. And in that case, definitely defense and security bureaucrats has the advantage of the expertise, but that is empirically very rare. So especially in my cases. So usually the issue emerged in the budget areas or legal areas. So in these areas, the Ministry of Finance in terms of budget or Cabinet Legislation Bureau in terms of the legal issues, specialists on these issues. So they have expertise advantages over security bureaucrats. So I would expect in this case, the security bureaucrats would likely to win. Security bureaucrats would be unlikely to win over the other bureaucracies. So this is just what I said in the last slide, and put it into the chart, and that's how that's fit into the 2x2 diagram. Yeah, now case studies. So the selection criteria, case studies selection criteria is, of course, one of the criteria is picking up the cases with either political bureaucratic conflict or interbureau conflict. And also, since I'm interested in the bureaucratic activities under the political leadership, so I would pick up the cases after 2000, which was the starting of the administrative reforms. And based on this criteria, there are 10 cases, these cases can be classified into 4 categories, 4 subcategories. I mean the bigger categories. One is a budget, and the second is the legal issues like collective self-defense rights, and the third one is the U.S. basis, which is the single case like FTEMA relocation, and the other one is the missile and counter missile measures. So I will look at these are 4 cases, and that would cover all of the cases. So I don't have to too much worried about the selection case selection strategy. So now the first one is FTEMA U.S. airbase relocation. And for those of you who are not familiar with this issue, there is a U.S. Marine air bases in in Okinawa Prefecture, and the FTEMA air base is considered as one of the world most dangerous base, which was in the middle of the city and surrounded by the housings and the apartment, and the people living there was feeling unsafe, and the Japanese and the U.S. governments were aware of this dangerousness, and they made an agreement in 2006 to relocate the relocate air base from FTEMA to Henoko, which is a coastal area, so which doesn't have so much people, and that would be much safer in terms of the safety of the people. But the leader of the Democratic Party of Japan, Yukio Hatayama, challenged this decision. And he promised during the election campaign in 2008, a general election campaign, and he promised the voters to move this base out of Japan, but at least out of Okinawa Prefecture. He promised that. And he won the election with the landslide victory over the LDP party. And then he became the prime minister. Now this became the issue of the government. Then the bureaucrats has opposed to this initiative. The one obvious reason was that there was already made an agreement with the United States. That's not Japan problem, but it's an international and alliance problem. And it's kind of interesting, but MOD and more for security bureaucrats or providing the advice to the U.S. counterparts not to compromise on the politicians' initiative, and also there was alternatives that relocating to the also Okinawa's air base, Camp Hansen or Tokunoshima areas. But after the brief review of these alternatives, they came to conclusion that Henoko is the only and sole options that the Japanese government could have. And there was also some kind of controversial information about like 120 kilometers rule of distance of the Marine Corps Marine Corps airlift forces and the Marine Corps ground forces should be located within the range of the 120 kilometers, which is 65 nautical miles. And but we are not sure if there was really that kind of rules or not. That was Hatoyama's claim, and he eventually gave up his initiative. And shortly after that, he had to resign as a prime minister. So it was a clear-cut bureaucrat win over the politicians. And the second one is a collective self-defense issue. And again, this is a Japan-specific problem, but previously the Japanese government interpretation is that the Japanese government has the right of the collective self-defense, even if you are not, physically attacked, you can, you can protect, you can use the force to protect your friendly countries or allied countries. But you have a right, but you can't exercise that right. That is our interpretation. So that, the Prime Minister Abe, his life work kind of was to correct this contradiction of the interpretation. And CLB, Cabinet Legislation Bureau, was exactly the one who made that kind of interpretation. So they resisted the change of the interpretation, but the security bureaucrats supported the Prime Minister's initiative. So there was no political Politburo conflict, but it's a kind of a inter-bureau conflict. So in 2006, the Prime Minister established the advisory panel, and MOFOR officials worked closely with the Prime Minister, providing the administrative assistance and technical assistance by selecting the advisory panel's members and conducted legal studies and contributed to the drafting the reports. But shortly after that, Abe had to resign as a prime minister due to his health issues. So the momentum disappeared shortly after that. But when he came back to the power, came back to the office in 2012, they reconsidered the reinterpretation of the collective self-defense. And now again, Prime Minister Abe took the political initiative, political leadership, and more for bureaucrats were again closely working with them. And this time, those MOFOR allies who were working with the Prime Minister in 2006 got higher position in the government. So they were very closely working with each other and effectively controlling the policymaking process. And MOFOR and the MOD officials especially provide the administrative and legal study assistance in the political negotiations between the ruling LDP party and its coalition partner, Kome partner, which is a little bit liberal and kind of cautious of changing the interpretation. So they are working very hard to find the feasible ground between the two parties, and they made it in 2014, I think. Yeah, so this is a little bit controversial, but this was sort of the victory. It's a mix, but sort of the victory of the bureaucrats and the prime minister to win what they wanted. And the third one is the counter-missile measures. They were looking at how to counter the missile threats from North Korea and China. And one of the options was seiji-shudō, which was a ground-based ballistic missile defense system, which is very expensive. So in 2018, Japan actually acquired that. But in that period, the Prime Minister Abe was very suspicious of the cost effectiveness of this system. And MOD was keen to acquire that because they need to reduce the maritime self-defense forces burden, because they have already have a easy system on the ship, but they also have multiple tasks, patrolling and anti-submarine missions and tactical air defense missions, and now they have ballistic missile defense missions. So the MOD wanted to reduce that burden, by deploying the easy system on the ground that would be taken charge of the ground self-defense force. So they were focused. They were emphasizing the merits of the acquisition, and the MOD's approach was not only just reaching out to Abe, but also to Abe's close associates like Cabinet Secretary Suga and LDP members to emphasize the merits of or necessity of this system, and eventually Abe approved to acquire that. But they made a fait accompli in the 2017 budget request in order to make sure that that is on agenda in next fiscal year's acquisition process. And 2020 was cancellation. It was actually canceled. I have to go rush because I'm running out of time. So MOD's mismanagement was there. So there was a miscalculation of data or the inflating the price of the system. So that sparked the public anger over that acquisition. So MOD Minister Kono made a surprise decision, but without much of the consultation with the MOD officials. So there was not much room for the bureaucrats to counter that. The strike capability was the other side of the coin of the Aegis Ashore. 2018, they were also trying to acquire strike capabilities, but again, the Abe was cautious about that concerning their political partner, Komeito Party, which was very cautious about the kind of capabilities. But the NSS and the MOD believed that kind of a capability was necessary to counter, especially to counter Chinese missile threats or incoming aggression. But they didn't explain that in that way. Rather, they framed in an innovative way. They said that it's very important to reduce the pilot safety, to reduce the pilot danger, or increase the pilot safety. So that kind of logic actually worked, and they didn't acknowledge that they are having the strike capabilities, but they actually get that capabilities by using that kind of logic. And also 2020, there was postpone of the acknowledgement of the strike capabilities. But again, at the time, the Prime Minister Suga was very cautious about acquiring that kind of capability too. Again, considering their political partner, but NSS and the MOD understood the feeling of the Suga, and they set the lower goal and to keep the momentum to keep the capability on the agenda. So they make sure that by using the formal and the quasi-formal documents, and they put the sentence that we will keep considering these capabilities in more ambiguous way, in the more ambiguous languages. So that actually worked very well. And then they actually, after Suga, Prime Minister Suga, the more motivated Prime Minister came into office, Kishida Fumio, and they quickly acknowledged the possession of the strike capabilities. So their strategy actually worked very well. And the budget issues, in 2003, the Koizumi surprisingly made a decision to drastically cut the defense budget. And it was a cabinet decision, so there was not much room for MOD to resist it. But in 2018, the Prime Minister Abe initiated the defense budget battle. He wanted to see the defense budget increase in 2018, it was cooperated with the NSS and MOD officials, bureaucrats. And the NSS wanted the 30 trillion yen over the 5 years. But MOD was kind of accumulated one by one program, necessary program. And then they estimated, they demanded 27.5 trillion yen. But MOF, Minister of Finance said, no, it's too much. You have to confine the defense budget growth, annual defense budget growth by 1.1%, which is the 25.5 trillion yen. And at the end of the day, the 27.5 level of defense buildup was approved. But actually, what's interesting was 2 trillion over 5 years cost cut was imposed on the MOD, which means basically literally they got only 25.5 trillion yen for defense budget. So actually the Minister of Finance demand won. And that was the major reason why major reason behind this result outcome was that but there was a budget cap. Nobody knew it, but there was actually a budget cap mentioned in a wider government document, which is called Basic Policy. And in that document, the Minister of Finance put the budget cap, which nobody could see. But actually, there was the budget cap, so that statement actually provide the legitimacy for the Ministry of Finance to insist on the 25.5 trillion yen. And 2022, they have another challenge. But this time, NSS and MOD learned why they lost the previous battle. So they knew that the budget cap in the basic policy is very important. So they worked closely with together, and they are trying to change that to lift the budget cap in the basic policy, and then they actually succeeded in lifting the cap in the basic policy, and also they were trying to incorporate the political actors into the budget battles, and LDP was proposed for the 2% of GDP defense budget. So the Kishida met with the Biden administration, President Biden, and he promised a substantial increase of the defense budget. But the problem is what the substantial means to him. And many people are trying to construct the narrative of the 2% of GDP, and then at the end there was a stalemate in the compromising demands of the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Defense. It was 40.5 for Ministry of Finance, but 43 trillion for MOD. But Kishida eventually decided that MOD's proposal was more appropriate in the defense budget. So that was a historic win for the Ministry of Defense. That was a definitely substantial increase for the Ministry of Defense on the defense budget. So these are the outcomes, and there was a kind of variations even in the against the predictions, and the 2004 loss, although there was a win was expected, and 2020 that was also loss on the upper left. In the upper right, that was kind of a clean sheet of the winning of the bureaucrats. But the bottom or lower left, it's a losing domain. But in 2014 there was a win which was kind of diverged from our prediction, and also lower right. That is win. Also, I expected the bureaucrats would lose. So what explains this? This is a final. Just so very quickly, decision makers' power, politicians' decision-making power actually overturns the bureaucrats' expertise advantage, and also the great loss actually provides the great lessons for the policymakers, including bureaucrats and prime ministers. So as we could see, the better performance in collective self-defense in 2014, and budget battle in 2022. So these are my observation. And again, this is a preliminary research, and it's work in progress. So major objective here for me is to get as much feedback as possible. So I would appreciate if you could make any comments or critiques to my project. Thank you very much.
Our question and answer session starts now. There's no line if you're online and you want to submit a question. Does anyone in the room have a question? I'll go for my boss first, Carlos.
Thank you so much again for helping inform us on this topic. I was curious if you might, basically in the nature of you've identified different bureaucrats, and in particular, I'm thinking this security bureaucrat that you focus on. What I'm really getting at is, have you found anything that has to do with the training background, sort of ways of thinking, and whether they're legal or expertises in military? And what I'm getting at is, I remember years ago reading a study that looked at understanding that the different cultures that you describe, and maybe I'm just is there anything related to the training and what kind of schools they come from, or their way of thinking? Engineers, lawyers, bureaucrats come in different, journalists, etc. Anyway, anything you can share related to that?
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Thank you very much. I didn't really think about that. I didn't go further to the education level. But I think it's a very important aspect of the training the bureaucrats. Many of the people are from the law school of the Tokyo University, which is the highest level of the university, and usually they are best and brightest in the Japanese postgraduate students. And yeah, I think, but it's not the defense specific, security specific, and they are everywhere. They are in the, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or METI, or Ministry of Defense. So they're very very intelligent, but I don't see any difference based on their educational background. I think they definitely have connections and networks depending on where they come from, depending on which university they come from. They have alumni networks, and sometimes I think they have a party once in a while between them, regardless of your affiliated ministry. But I'm not sure if that actually affects their policy preferences or something like that. Does that answer your question?
Those lines of, for example, today, the security bureaucrats specifically, I mean, today they've got networks and connections to industry and different kind of industries than maybe the traditional, I don't know, economic bureaucrats of the past. And so just, new players, new interests, that's really what I was getting at. And you touched on some of that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Still, I mean, like in terms of the defense policy, that the Japanese lobbyists or the interest groups in the defense industry is relatively weak compared to other areas like the agriculture or economic corporate business elites. That's because of the decades of the Japanese so-called anti-militarist policy, and that they do not so much attention to the nurturing the defense industry in the domestic. But I think it will be changing because Japan is transforming reforming that Japan's arms export policy and so on and so forth, that will actually expand the size and the scale of the Japanese defense industry. So I think that kind of a effect might be emerging in the near future, but I'm not seeing that kind of a trend yet right now. Thank you very much.
Question from online. What is the role of think tanks and other non-governmental organizations in developing legislation or strategies taken up by either government or bureaucrats? And who are the key think tanks active in this space?
That's a great question. I was trying to look at that and dig deeper into the think tank, because I'm from the National Institute for Defense Study, which is the only government-related security-oriented specific think tank in Japan, and which is the most influential think tank in the policy making process. I think the National Institute of Defense Studies might be the one. I'm serious that we have a lot of connections with the policymakers, and we once in a while send personnel into the policy making process and the policy sector. And actually, right now, some of our colleagues are working in the policy sector, and they can influence the policy making process from within the policy sector. That's I think the huge advantages of as a think tank, and to affect and to achieve our preferred, not our, but our personal preferences of the certain defense policy into the Japanese defense policy making. And I think it's kind of difficult, but how much influence we have, I think it's not measurable. I can't trace it. So it's more like a third phase of power. That's creation ideological, idea-based power to change the mind of the policymakers, to affect the mind of the policymakers. But in terms of the social scientific research, I think it's kind of difficult. That's why I was looking at the influence or impact of a think tank at once, but I kind of gave up to look at how important, how influential the think tank would be like. It's very different from the United States. They can have a revolving door, then they send the personnel often into the center of the policymaking process in a very high position, but Japan is not like that. So usually controlled by the career officials. So I think I would say relatively National Institute for Defense Study, my institute has influence compared to others, but I still think that influence and impact is very limited.
Aloha, and thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. On the heels of Carlos's comments, which were really interesting, I had wanted to ask, jotted this down. You've looked at different types of bureaucrats focused on the defense policy making. And we're seeing so many different areas now become securitized, environmental security, food security. Yeah, these are, economic security. And so as these areas then become more influential in the defense scheme, are you seeing more bureaucrats take hold of these issues, or are you seeing the defense bureaucrats take hold of these issues? Is there an interplay that you've seen in your work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. How the expansion of the securitization affects the power of the specific ministry. I think the trend of the expansion of the definition of the security is kind of new, especially in Japan. It was the mid-2010s that we publicly started to focus on economic security and the cyber defense as well. It's a very new phenomena in the Japanese defense policy, and also food security and human rights and seiji-shudō and these kind of things. I think as much as it's confined into the area of defense, like the seiji-shudō, they have a lot of, although this is not the conventional security or traditional security, they have a lot of know-how and a lot of experiences and skills to deal with that kind of issues. So I think the seiji-shudō, if we talk about non-traditional security issues like seiji-shudō, that's totally Ministry of Defense area, and they have expertise advantages. But more inter-agentical issues like economic security or cybersecurity and other food security, I'm not sure how they are trying to allocate the mission and share the burden of that mission. It's still I think premature. They are trying to be as quick as possible to establish and to consolidate the institutional mechanisms to tackle these issues. And to some extent, I think the Japanese government made some progress, but still it's still very new, and I can't see any phenomena which is actually winning and which is actually losing in terms of that kind of battle. And I think it's interesting to look at the 2025 decision of the active cyber defense. that's actually involving the multiple agencies, National Police Agency and Ministry of Defense and METI, Ministry of Economy, and so on and so forth. But I'm not sure if that's actually if the Ministry of Defense or other ministry or agency is actually excelling over others or not. So I think it takes some more times to see that kind of a phenomenon. Thank you very much, though.
Question from online. Do bureaucrats in Japan take an oath of office? And if so, to whom or to what do they pledge their loyalty?
That's a great question. I think ultimately it's loyalty as to the Japanese citizens. That's that's our ultimate purpose, to serve for the country. But when it comes to the policymaking process, I think it's undeniable fact that we have to work for the prime minister. How the prime minister is taking what kind of a policy agenda the prime minister have. That is one thing that we are pretty much focusing on, and how they would react, and how if our policy proposal, if that is from the bureaucratic side, if our proposal could be feasible and could survive the scrutinization of the prime minister, or his or her associates. So I think that's an essential question, and essentially it's a Japanese public, Japanese citizens that we are serving for, but that the bureaucrats are serving for. But in the policymaking process, I think the major focus is on the prime minister. I think it's no matter there was administrative reforms or not, ultimately the policy must be approved by the prime minister. So I think that is kind of a coherent phenomenon and goal for the bureaucrats.
Oh, got it. Yeah, I just had one question. Could you comment on the role of gaiatsu in shaping the behavior of defense bureaucrats?
Mm-hmm.
I would note in, I think, 1970, that when the Americans were dithering over getting a carrier into Yokosuka, that Tanaka Kakue's administration sent them quietly a message saying, tell us what you need and don't back down. But if you could just comment on on it.
Thank you very much. The logic of gaiatsu is still existing in the Japanese society, and some of the people are suspicious of the Japanese government, certain Japanese policy, national policy, as a product of the gaiatsu. And I think again, it's kind of difficult to confirm that there was clear link between the U.S. preferences and what Japanese policymakers have done. Of course, there is close connections and close interactions between the Japanese side and the U.S. side, especially when it comes to the policies like defense policy or security policy. It's not only about us, but also about the region and about the alliance. So I think we can't skip that policy mechanism and process. But because of this, close interactions, our preferences and the U.S. preferences are getting closer and closer, and we can't, divide clearly between these countries' interests, because we are almost, usually on the same page in terms of the security and the defense policies. So from this perspective, I can't, I can't separately point the, the factor which is gaiatsu as a, as a useful explanatory variable to explain the Japanese defense policy attitude. And, these days, the Japanese, whether it's a budget or, strike capabilities, Japanese government made it clear every single time they said that this is our own policy. This is our own decision-making. And it's not because, the other countries are, told us to do, it's our own decision. So I think that's emphasis actually signals that they are aware of there was a concern about gaiatsu in the Japanese society, but they are trying to make clear that, we make our policy based on our own judgment and own process. Oh, sorry.
We've reached the end of our allotted time. Please join me in thanking again our speaker. And thanks to all of you for attending and also to our online audience. This meeting today was part of a series. Our next edition will be on December 11th, when our presenter will be Joel S. Witt, a distinguished fellow at the Harry L. Stimson Center, on the topic of Flashpoint, how America failed to disarm North Korea and the lessons for the future. Hope to see you then, but until then, ahui ho. It's yours. Yeah.